Greetings, I'm Zachary Hepner. Pleased to share this DVAR Torah with you for Parashat Vetchanan. In Parashat Vetchanan, after reviewing the Decalogue, just before the section of the Shema Yisrael, we find the words yiten levavam, which means, who would give that they have such a heart? The translation is a little bit difficult. Chazal and Avodah Zarah explain that God wanted the Israelites to ask God directly for assistance in order to receive direct revelation. In other words, God desired that the Israelites receive direct revelation without Moshe as an intermediary, using the language tenata, you God, you should give us the heart. They should have been asking for a direct connection to God, bypassing Moshe entirely. If they're asking for that heart and they want to bypass Moshe, that would be a coronary bypass of Moshe. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan mi yiten v'haya levavam zelahem amar le Moshe Yisrael kafui tova b'nei kafui tova b'shah shemar kadosh baruch hu l'Yisrael mi yiten v'haya levavam zelahem haya lehem lamar tein ata. You are ingrates, children of ingrates, when the Holy One, blessed be He, said to the Jewish people who would give that they had such a heart as this, always they should have said, you should give us a heart to fear you. The Talmud continues, and it becomes evident that Moshe took 40 years to realize that this had not taken place, that 40 years had passed, and the people still hadn't asked Moshe for direct revelation. Alternatively, since 40 years had passed, there was no point in waiting any longer for the Israelites to figure it out on their own. These two different versions are the two different versions that Tosafot see in this Gemara in Avodah Zarah 4. Moshe uses a very strong language. Kafuyei tova b'nei kafuyei tova, ingrate son of ingrates. When they did not ask Moshe for assistance, they were ungrateful because the man, which was perfectly nutritious and produced no waste, they didn't appreciate that. B'nei kafuyei tova, the children of ingrates. Well, I guess we're all the children of ingrates because Adam said to God, the woman which you had given me, she gave me from the fruit. It's striking to hear Moshe speak so critically about such missed opportunities. However, I'd like to bring to your attention that the Midrash in many places says the following about the burning bush narrative. B'sha'ah shamad Moshe mehar lirot miyad nigla v'kadosh baruch hu. Ilemale amad Moshe milatchila haya hakadosh baruch hu nigla alav miyad. Ve'achshav misha'avar ve'achar kach amad nitakev hadibur elav. And there's more poetic language in different Chazals. But translate this one, which is in Shemot Rabbah 45. Moshe had experienced the frustration that when he beheld God at the burning bush, he asked God, he didn't look at God. And now, at the narrative, when he asks to see God at the narrative of the golden calf, Hashem says, sorry, you missed the boat. You struck out. Moshe himself experienced the frustration of missing the highest degree of beholding God. He missed it at the burning bush narrative. First came the narrative of the missed opportunity of the burning bush. Then came the 10 Commandments when the Israelites failed to ask God for direct revelation. Afterwards, after this, then came the narrative of the golden calf, when Moses asked as if to see, in quotes, God, and his request was rejected. Strike out. Moshe was now living with 40 years of disappointment. What's perplexing is, why didn't Moshe instruct the Israelites to seek out God directly? Why did Moshe have to wait to arise for them to spontaneously ask without guidance? Why didn't Moshe hold their hands? I believe this is the background of the two readings of Tosafot, knowing the history of Moshe and the burning bush in mind. One reading is that Moshe waited 40 years. If they hadn't figured it out by now, then they might as well tell them God desires direct communication with his people, direct. Some things need hand-holding, but the highest zenith of prophecy, that must come unprompted and from the individual. Now, 40 years had passed. Moshe was unwilling to die without sharing that incredibly important message. But according to the other interpretation of Tosafot, is that it actually took Moshe 40 years to come to terms with his own personal experience. For 40 years, Moshe believed that he had struck out at the burning bush. The inning had ended. He had thought that the Israelites had also struck out when they failed to ask God for help in receiving the direct revelation. And that was such an opportunity. It was lost. It could never return. But after 40 years, Moshe came to a new realization. He himself had learned that you might not get another chance in the same inning, but eventually the lineup comes full circle, and you're up to bat again. He understood that a missed opportunity does not mean that the game is over. The shift in thinking may have been deeply personal on Moshe's part, drawn from his own mischance, and it allowed him to see that there can be future opportunities, even for something as profound as standing before the Almighty. In fact, the most famous Rashi on the first verse in Parashat Vetchanan supports such a change in Moshe's attitude, as Rashi famously teaches us not to ever give up, as Moshe had never given up with his tefillah. The second view of Tosfot sees Moshe's words here not as addressing the Israelites' missed opportunity, more as a reflection of Moshe's own missed opportunity. Just had they had struck out, but they were back on deck, they were now at the plate, Moshe himself had learned that while he had struck out at the burning bush and was rejected in the golden calf narrative, he too was back on deck. The lesson is simple. A typical Major League Baseball player gets to plate about 4 or 5 times in a game. That is without extra innings. And it ain't over until the ball game's over. You might even get into those extra innings, so don't give up. God is the pitcher. He will give you many chances. And he doesn't just want to play ball. He wants you to step up to the plate without any intermediary. He'll help, but you need to ask. This DVAR Torah was prepared in a museum in Cooperstown, New York. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.